He stopped at the morgue doors and would not move. Everyone thought it was routine until the zipper came down. What they pulled from that gurney froze the entire hospital. All right, here's the full story, but real quick, drop your favorite dog's name in the comments and hit that subscribe button. The night was still. Cool wind brushed over the parking lot behind Memorial General Hospital, a mid-sized trauma center in Charleston, South Carolina. The night shift had just started. Inside, nurses carried on with quiet urgency, orderlies pushed carts through fluorescent-lit corridors, and the basement-level loading dock where the morgue accepted late-night transports sat in silence under yellow security lights. Nothing about this Thursday evening hinted at disruption, except the dog. Ace, a 5-year-old black German Shepherd, had been assigned to Memorial General 3 months ago. Part of a K-9 pilot program meant to support after-hour security sweeps and respond to threats without overstretching human personnel. His handler, Officer Raymond Keene, was in his 40s, calm-voiced and highly observant. He'd worked with several dogs before, but Ace was different. Quiet, precise, unnervingly sensitive. By 10:30 p.m. they had completed their standard sweep. Parking lot perimeter, rear exits, and generator rooms. All was clear, nothing out of place, until they passed the double steel doors of the morgue loading dock. Ace stopped cold. No command, no noise, just halted mid-stride and stared. Keene turned, expecting a squirrel or a flickering light. But Ace didn't just stare. His ears went high, his tail stiffened, and a low, rhythmic growl formed in his throat. Keene watched him closely. The morgue doors weren't new. Ace had passed them dozens of times. The scents there, disinfectant, rubber, metal, were always strong. But tonight, something was different. Without warning, Ace lunged. Not violently, but with deliberate force, yanking Keene toward the seam where the rolling doors met the concrete loading ramp. Then he barked, once, loud, shattering the quiet, then again, and again. Security footage would later show the timing precisely. At 10:27 p.m., a private transport van arrived at the rear service entrance. It carried a body from a small county facility 30 miles out. The manifest was clean, female, mid-40s, suspected overdose, awaiting autopsy. The van's back door opened. 2 morgue technicians rolled out a sealed gurney wrapped in thick vinyl. They signed the intake form and wheeled it straight to the cold chamber. Standard protocol. No red flags. Except Ace hadn't seen that gurney arrive. When Keene checked the clipboard hanging beside the security console, everything appeared in order, at least on paper. But Ace kept barking. He moved again, circling the doors, nose pressed to the ground, tail curled tight in frustration. It wasn't like him. He didn't overreact. He didn't alert without cause. Keene radioed it in. Unit 3, K-9 showing signs of alert at morgue loading dock. No visible breach. Requesting access to verify. Dispatch paused, then approved. Minutes later, Keene keyed in his access code and the door slid open with a dull, metallic groan. Ace bolted forward, his nails clicking hard against the floor, straight toward the far wall where the gurney now sat in the holding corridor. The gurney was nothing unusual. One of 3 in the corridor waiting for transfer tags. It was zipped and sealed. Keene stopped Ace just short of it. The dog's posture went rigid. He sniffed the frame, then the floor beneath it, then the cover, and then he sat, a silent final indication of confirmed alert. Ace only sat when he was certain. Keene opened his radio again, confirming alert. 1 body transport, requesting secondary clearance for inspection. Within 15 minutes, 2 administrators and a hospital security supervisor arrived on site. A nurse from pathology pulled the intake record. Name, Leanne Walters, age 45, time of death 6:14 p.m. Transferred from Northside County Emergency Clinic. Condition, suspected overdose, found unresponsive, no known family. All paperwork was signed. But the transfer van, though legitimate, had not logged its departure time, only arrival. And the hospital's exterior camera near the service entrance had gone offline for exactly 12 minutes, right around the arrival window. Unusual, not impossible, but paired with Ace's behavior, more than enough to raise questions. The decision was made to unzip the bag. It was Officer Keene who opened the zipper, flanked by a technician and the pathologist. The vinyl was peeled back slowly, layer by layer. The smell hit first, not decay, but something artificial, bleach, heavy antiseptic, almost too much, as though trying to cover something else. Then came the face. It was Leanne Walters, pale, unmarked, eyes closed, but the pathologist's eyes narrowed. Her wrists, covered in medical tape, looked oddly thick. The tape wasn't standard issue. It had been applied sloppily, too much adhesive. Her ID band was wrapped beneath the gauze. The technician gently peeled back the tape on one arm and froze. Beneath the gauze, pressed into her inner wrist, was a wound, deep, circular, and crusted in dried fluid. Not an injection site, a burn, possibly electrical. The ID band had been fake, and Leanne Walters was not dead. It happened slowly. The moment passed so quietly no one reacted at first. But Ace moved before any human did. His head snapped back toward the gurney, his ears flattened, and then she breathed. Just once, shallow, barely audible, but her chest moved. The technician shouted, and in seconds they were rolling the gurney into the trauma bay. The mystery woman had a heartbeat. She was alive. She had been zipped inside a morgue bag labeled deceased, processed as a body, yet still clinging to life, and if Ace hadn't barked, she would have never made it to morning. Over the next 2 hours, the hospital became a quiet storm of whispers and secured hallways. Leanne Walters, now on oxygen and stabilized, was moved to ICU under guarded supervision. The documents from the county facility were re-examined. They listed Dr. Harlan Boone as the attending physician. But Boone had not been on shift that day. His signature had been forged. The transport van, owned by a subcontracted service, but the driver listed, William Rader, hadn't worked for them in over a year. That van had used real credentials, but the personnel and the cargo were arranged by someone else, someone who wanted Leanne off the radar, someone who almost succeeded. While the hospital processed its internal reports, Officer Keene returned to the morgue corridor. Ace was calm now. His work was done, but Keene knelt beside the gurney, staring at the vinyl sheets. It wasn't just luck. Ace had sensed something inside that body bag, not just the human scent, but pain, suffering, something no machine, scanner, or human eye had picked up. And when Ace had pulled him toward the morgue doors, it wasn't disobedience, it was purpose. This dog had not just found someone, he had saved someone. ICU room 312 was under restricted access by 4 a.m. No name on the chart, no public log entry. Only 3 staff members had clearance to enter, 1 trauma nurse, a senior resident, and a respiratory technician. The woman admitted under the name Leanne Walters was now stable, unconscious but alive. A round of blood tests confirmed a shallow breathing rate, irregular electrical burns across her forearms, and elevated cortisol levels indicative of prolonged stress, not overdose. But the system had processed her as deceased. Her original file, transferred from Northside County Clinic, was now under forensic review. None of it was making sense. The orders had come through clean, the transport looked routine, but this wasn't just a paperwork error. This was an attempt to erase her. By sunrise, a special investigator from Charleston PD had arrived at Memorial General. A quiet man with years in missing persons, he reviewed the intake logs and surveillance gaps with security. He asked one question repeatedly: who benefits from her disappearance? There was no next of kin listed, no emergency contact. She hadn't checked into Northside on her own. The file showed she had been found in a parking garage near a small tech park off Highway 54, unresponsive. A Good Samaritan had allegedly brought her to the clinic, left a name that turned out to be false, then vanished. And that was when Officer Keene stepped forward with something new. A note, folded, water-stained, and crumpled. It had been stuck to the underside of the stretcher. Ace had been sniffing under the gurney when Keene noticed it. A barely taped square of paper, almost unnoticeable. 5 words were scribbled in uneven ink. This is not the end. The hospital's lower level housed old utility rooms, most locked, a few used for emergency storage. One of them, room B12, hadn't been accessed in over a year. Keene asked to check it anyway. The key took time to find. When they finally opened the door, the air smelled stale, mildew, and rust. Inside, cardboard boxes lined the walls, an old janitorial sink, broken shelving, and something else. A single used medical glove, still damp, lying beneath the sink basin. It wasn't hospital standard. The latex was green, textured, military grade, or high-risk lab quality. The box labels nearby were standard supply codes, but one was peeled back, revealing a case of outdated oxygen valves packed with thermal padding. Beneath it, tucked flat against the bottom of the box, was a folded schematic of a ventilator circuit. Marked in red was a route to bypass hospital detection systems using reprogrammed monitor codes. It was a breathing assist hack. One used to fake flatline readings. Hospital HR records flagged a recent hire, Daniel Hirsch, listed as a respiratory equipment consultant on a 3-day contract from a vendor in Georgia. His name had appeared once, in a delivery log for a software patch that was never applied. When officers visited the vendor's listed address, they found an empty warehouse. No Daniel Hirsch, no registered consultant, just a front. The badge had been scanned once late that night at the door to the ICU wing. Timestamp 10:11 p.m. That was 16 minutes before the private transport van arrived, and 20 minutes before Ace barked. At 7:42 a.m., the woman who was not Leanne Walters opened her eyes. No panic, no scream, just a slow blink as she took in the room. Monitors beeped in steady rhythm. She moved her fingers, flinching slightly at the stiffness. When the trauma nurse leaned over to speak, she didn't respond. She turned her head to the window. Outside, the morning sun hit the brick courtyard. She stared at it, unmoving. The nurse called for a physician. A week prior, the real Leanne Walters had died in a single-vehicle accident along Route 74. Her death had been processed correctly. The body was taken to Northside County Clinic for temporary holding. She had no family. When Charleston PD checked the body logs from that week, her record had been closed without incident. But the file ID used on the woman now in ICU matched Leanne's, meaning someone had used her information, a real death, to cover a fake one. The woman in room 3012 had never been Leanne. She was someone else entirely. Officer Keene returned to the morgue hallway that evening. Ace walked with him, calm now, focused. Keene knelt and placed his hand on the metal base of the gurney rack. He thought back to the moment Ace pulled him. How specific it was. How determined. Not random, not curious. Targeted. Ace hadn't just detected a living person. He had detected stress, maybe chemical changes, maybe scent markers. But more than that, he had refused to ignore it, even with the systems cleared, even with people brushing it off. The dog had known and had dragged everyone else into seeing what he already did. The woman finally spoke the next day. No full sentences, no memory of how she got there. But she remembered pain. She remembered waking up inside the body bag, barely able to breathe. She remembered trying to scream but being too weak. And then she heard something outside, a bark, sharp, close, familiar. It had come through the steel. She remembered that sound. It was the first thing that told her she was not alone. Investigation teams traced her fingerprints. The results came back. Her real name was Elena Ward, missing person. Reported 4 months earlier from Greenville, South Carolina. Former hospital administrative assistant. No criminal record. Quiet life. Her last known employer, a private research facility with a connection to 2 anonymous grants, one of which had recently been suspended due to internal fraud. That facility had since gone dark. And the director, unreachable. But records showed Elena had access to administrative emails, ones that tied the grant to unapproved patient trials. Then her phone went silent, and 4 months later she woke up in a morgue bag. The note stuck to the stretcher hadn't been meant for authorities. It had been meant for someone inside, someone who expected to receive her body quietly and dispose of it. And when Ace barked, that plan crumbled. The timing, the false name, the burn marks, the hidden file tag, it had all been constructed for one moment of vanishing, but one dog, one instant of refusal, had ripped through the veil, and now the story was unraveling. The walls of Memorial General had gone quiet again, but beneath that quiet, something had shifted. The woman who had arrived in a zipped body bag, now identified as Elena Ward, was stable, guarded, and slowly piecing together fragments of memory. Doctors said the trauma may have temporarily suppressed key cognitive function, but what she could recall was precise. It was not an overdose, it was not an accident. It was a system designed to bury her while still alive, and it had almost succeeded. A week after Elena's identity was confirmed, an FBI team entered the now abandoned research facility where she had worked. Tucked behind secured walls and listed in outdated records as a climate-controlled document archive, they discovered a sublevel that had never been formally registered. Inside, stripped-down observation rooms, discarded biometric equipment, and a disconnected server bay. On the back wall of the furthest room, scrawled in black marker, were 4 words: "She knows too much." There were no names, no personnel files, but based on fingerprints, timestamps, and DNA swabs, it became clear. Elena Ward had been held there, possibly for days, before she was sedated and sent to be erased under someone else's identity. A real corpse had become her smokescreen, until a dog pulled her back. The private transport van, initially traced to a medical subcontractor, was eventually located, burned, and abandoned in a scrap yard outside Columbia. Inside, buried beneath melted plastic and wiring, investigators found the warped remains of a key card labeled Hirsch. No prints, no wallet, no ID. But lodged inside the center console was a torn page from a logbook. The last entry, Morgue 27B, midnight complete. It was written in the same handwriting as the note found under Elena's stretcher. 27B was a discontinued morgue code, part of a test numbering system never implemented. No staff at Memorial General used it. No official document bore it. But that one code connected the route, the signature, the timing, and confirmed this had happened before. 2 more accidental deaths were flagged in the weeks following Elena's survival. Both involved unclaimed patients transferred after being labeled as overdoses or undocumented medical complications. Both vanished before they reached county-level processing. Both were transported by the same subcontracted service. One of them had listed no known ID, but fingerprint logs later revealed he had been part of the same research facility. His file had been closed. His body never recovered. Elena's survival broke the cycle, but no one knew how many more never made it out of the bag. In the days that followed, Officer Keene noticed a change in Ace. He was still sharp, still focused, but there were moments, brief, fleeting, where he would stop suddenly during nightly patrols and glance down hallways he had never checked before. He had started pausing at ICU room 312, not barking, not growling, just sitting, watching. When Elena, recovering slowly with minimal speech, was moved to another wing for rehab, Ace stopped sitting. He had done his part. But Keene knew this had left a mark. Because dogs don't forget scent, and what Ace had smelled that night, it wasn't just one person's fear, it was the weight of a system designed to silence people who knew too much. Lena was discharged under witness protection protocols. Before she left, a request came through her case manager. She wanted to see the dog. There was no press, no visitors, just a quiet moment in the hospital courtyard before her relocation. Keene brought Ace to the edge of the stone bench where she waited in a hooded coat and sunglasses. She didn't say a word. She just knelt down, hand trembling, and placed it gently on Ace's shoulder. He didn't move for a moment. Then he leaned forward, pressing his head into her lap. No commands, no prompts, just recognition. Somewhere in that final moment of fear inside the zip bag, she had heard his bark. She had held on to it. And now she finally got to say thank you without needing to speak. Memorial General quietly discontinued subcontracted medical transport services. A new internal oversight protocol was implemented. Every intake file now required triple sign-off for body transport. And the basement morgue area? It received a full security overhaul, including new surveillance systems and direct patrol check-ins. But none of that made headlines. What did get remembered by those who worked that shift was a dog who refused to ignore a door. A dog who sat when no one else saw the danger, and a handler who chose to trust instinct over routine. Keene kept the crumpled piece of paper in his desk drawer, the one found taped under the stretcher. "This is not the end," he read it often, because it turned out to be true. It wasn't the end. It was the start of something that would ripple through multiple counties, institutions, even agencies. And it started with one moment, a single refusal from a dog whose only job was to patrol a hallway. Keene clipped a photo beside the note, Ace, sitting quietly, ears forward, by the old morgue door, the same place where it all began. There were no medals, no parades, but those who knew the full story never forgot. Ace remained on duty at Memorial General for 2 more years before retiring. Reuben Keene adopted him officially the same week. They still walked past the loading dock sometimes. Ace no longer barked, but sometimes he paused just for a second and stared at the steel doors, as if he remembered the night he broke the rules and saved a life no one even knew was still breathing. One bark changed everything, and most people would have missed it. More moments like this are coming, and each one hits deeper. So go ahead, like the video, hit subscribe, and stick around because the next story might be even harder to forget.